A very good morning to you. Welcome on into today's programme. I think we were all shocked indeed when the An Bord Pleanála decision came out, and then all of a sudden it was challenged, and they hadn't taken into account a climate action change to the legislation within the country. They hadn't taken that into account when they could have, when determining the future for the Galway City Ring Road. So it ended up in court. And at that stage, we spoke about it extensively to many people involved in the City Ring Road. And the courts then had to make a decision. The decision that we were hoping for, or that those that were hoping for, was that it would be referred back to An Bord Pleanála so they could take into account the climate action change legislation that had changed during their tenure and why they were looking at the application. But that decision was determined in the High Court yesterday. And with Mr. Justice Richard Humphreys making some orders. Let me go to Kenny Deery, who joins me from Galway Chamber. Kenny, you've been all over this, and the team who put this application together have worked through the night to figure out exactly what happens next. What does happen next?
Yeah, good morning, Keith, and good morning to your listeners. First of all, just before I get into that, Keith, I want to congratulate Breda Fox on her retirement to the local enterprise office in the Chamber. We've worked very closely with Breda, and she has been a stellar supporter of the business community. It was a lovely interview and delighted to hear it. In terms of the Ring Road and the decision yesterday, in essence, the decision of An Bord Pleanála that was taken, as you eloquently put it, in November 2021 has technically been quashed. Now, in a previous era, that would have been significantly problematic and could have ended this particular application cycle. However, thankfully, there has been a legislative change. And what that has facilitated is the courts now have a remedy to bring the case back before the board in An Bord Pleanála for consideration. And what they've asked the board to do is consider from the date of the Climate Action Bill, actually from the date after which the inspector's report was submitted, which was earlier in 2021. For your listeners, if we remember, this application submitted since 2018 as part of a Galway Transport Strategy launched in 2016. So there's been a significant amount of consultation, engagement and work on this. When the application was submitted in 2018, the An Bord Pleanála set about their work, and part of that was preparing for an oral hearing process. And if we remember rightly, the oral hearing started, I always remember the overcast day out at the G in March 2020, got into great gusto for the first few weeks, and then COVID hit, which meant that the oral hearing was suspended and didn't pick up again until October 2020 in a Microsoft Teams view, which was a significant challenge, to be fair, for ABP at the time, because the consultation and the depth of involvement from right across the board was significant, and it was difficult moving that into a Teams environment at that stage. However, the oral hearing completed, and you'll remember, and your listeners will remember, you and I talking, I think 4 times throughout 2021, the decision was being deferred, it was being delayed. We were fairly animated and outraged because the passage of time has always been the biggest challenge on this project. However, a decision was made, and alas, a piece of climate action legislation was enacted within a few days that hadn't been factored into it, which beggars belief in many ways that that could have happened. However, that's what the court adjudicated on yesterday. So I think, Keith, from a business community perspective, people know, and large corporates and businesses know, these projects take time. They look from across the world, they take time. However, at this stage, we're at a point now of immense frustration and I think fatigue in many ways. The facts haven't changed. There isn't, no matter what proponents, and I was angered by some of what I seen on social media yesterday evening from those celebrating this technical quashing yesterday. But number one, it's just another step in the process. Number two, those opposing it don't have alternatives that are anyway meet the needs of the 3 core groups who really are impacted by this. The people in the city trying to move about the city, the commuters to and from the city, and the people west of the city who want to get east without going through the city. And I think any of those who are against it and were celebrating yesterday evening, they've very little to be celebrating, because in essence, this is just another step in a process. And I think Taoiseach put it very eloquently on your programme at one stage early last year, when he talked about all the fair processes have taken place here. We have consulted to within an nth degree of consultation on this project. It was approved by ABP. Clearly, there was a misstep in ABP in missing that piece of legislation, and it's back before them basically to remake the decision. and either go a yes or a no, or if it's a case that further detail is needed, ask the inspectors to reopen the case and seek that further information, what that may look like. And I think everybody is trying to figure out what next steps are. Both the local authorities as the applicants. Obviously, ABP, we know, and this is our big call, I think, from the Chamber movement in particular, Keith, on this project. On both Planola, we know from other coverage, not for us to get into, have their own challenges at the moment. We know there's a significant backlog of cases within ABP. And I think the big call from all, and I know it's an independent body, Darragh O'Brien as Minister has significant draft legislation to change possibly the way they operate, but we need this case prioritised and accelerated because in essence it's back before them for adjudication based on something that they missed. So we cannot have Galway and the west of Ireland community in general, not just the business community, held up and held in further limbo of a couple of years whilst they work through a caseload. This needs to be prioritised, and I think that's the absolute call this morning from all.